Hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Markus Murting and I have here my colleague behind this wall because we are tested, we are protected, so we have everything ready for Corona. Maybe Helmut, 2 or 3 sentences about you. Sorry if I'm always coming to your side. It's a little bit unusual that you have this I will call it social distance wall. Maybe for the introduction, Helmut, 2 or 3 sentences about you.
Yeah, thank you, Markus. Yeah, my name is Helmut from Feiertag. I'm working at the AIT and I'm working in the field of virtual reality for different application fields. So for training, for test environment and observation behavior of humans. So under industrial context.
Thank you very much, Helmut. So really welcome to our webinar. We have approximately 45 minutes where we talk a little bit. I think most of you was at our first webinars regarding shot pros and the topic of police and training. Now our goal for today is a little bit to dive deeper into the topic of future context and future use cases where we see a nice and interesting potential between virtual reality and law enforcement agencies. And this is so the goal of today, where we really would like to show you some of our ideas. So this is the first webinar we have in Shot Pros. You learned a little bit in the past about our topic. Our topic is really VR training of stressful situations. I think you also learned a little bit about the topic of stress cues. And now we are jumping in similar, not similar areas where we really think their virtual reality has a high potential where we can improve training, but also for operating, for mission planning. We also have some cases of the topic of forensic. So I really think there should be some interesting points. Like I mentioned, Helmut and me, we are both working in the project Shot Pros. So I'm responsible from the coordinator point of view, and Helmut is really the expert of virtual reality. And especially now, Shot Pros is approximately in the halftime. So we are at the moment really doing a lot of experiments, a lot of development in the meaning of try out new things, also to observe the behavior. Especially at this moment, we had the last 2 weeks, our law enforcement feedback weeks, in the meaning of we have our 6 organizations and to really give us feedback to the actual system, to the actual scenarios. And what was for us quite interesting, that we really learned a lot. And also what we have to do on the plan for today is a little bit an outlook, also an outlook to research trends, but we have always the thinking of it should not only be research, it should be really coming to the practical point of view. And also for today, if you have any questions, we will try to answer them. We have our chat system, but also at the end of our webinar, because we are planning the next steps and the next interesting points of virtual reality and the police field. So if there are any points we should maybe cover in the future or you're more interested, please just give us the short information and we will plan it for the next future points. So maybe let's jump in our topic. You know, normally we are really focused on the training, on multiplayer training, more polices into the virtual reality. But I think there are more cases. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we really observed a strong trend to the topic of virtual reality or also augmented reality, in the meaning of you have the possibility of training in completely new environments. You can really generate new situations with the virtual reality, but it also helps us in many fields of the normal life. We see really a very strong trend in the topic of entertainment and in the topic of education, but also in the industrial field when you think of factories. But I think there's a lot of potential, and this is what we try to today, to observe on the one hand really the topic of law enforcement agencies, and on the other hand to see also what in other cases happen, what in other fields happen, in other contexts, and what we can learn. And so I will hand over to Helmut and just some cases where you see the future of police and virtual reality. Thank you very much. Helmut, it's your turn.
Thank you, Markus. So our first case is about mission planning. So when you're thinking about training for police, it's always like a team training. So people are common in a virtual environment, sharing that environment and training their decision making and acting under different conditions, and getting one step back and having like a decision control system coming from that side, and you get an overview. How does it look like in a decision control or decision support system? What the people are seeing there, and how they communicate with the teams, how they instruct them, how they share or coordinate the resources. And that can be combined with the team training, like in ShotPros. That means it's different. So you have a control center with a lot of monitors. People are doing their work, making their decisions, and making some coordination tasks, and talking then the virtual reality, and they have their feedback from the virtual reality back to the control center, see what's the decision there, and give the advices. And parts of the whole scenario are computer simulated. Parts of them are done by the real team in that virtual setting. And it's also like, then you can also train the management part of it, on not only the operative SWAT team per se. So that means you can train if the incidents are, the communication is right, the response was set right, and you can also think about logistics or other things and resources. And very valuable is, in that sense, is also like you can reconstruct real infrastructure. So that means you are not that virtual, so that the environment does not exist. So there are also you can make a 3D model out of a well-known environment, for a city district or a place in the city. You have the virtual environment to train the people locally in that scene, and you get back also to the command center. Where are the guys? What are they doing? What are they communicating back to the decision control center? And what are maneuvers you are planning? And then afterwards you can talk about where the decisions taken right, where the teams instructed or steered right, and then you have a whole scenario and a whole planning from the management side down to the operative police officers. Yeah, that's for the first case.
Maybe just 2 or 3 sentences to add. Also, I really think the mission planning scenario has for me 2 big advantages of the virtual reality. On the one hand, like Helmut, you mentioned, you have the topic of training complex situations with different units. So for example, we also had experiences in the last time, if you had the whole topic of first responders, and especially the mission planning between police and the ambulance, and they really can create the scenarios, you can train them. But I think also, if we look a little bit into the future, it's not only the training part of the mission planning, it's also mission doing during an action. For example, you have the scenario of a really large demonstration, you're observing the people, you're observing the environment, and therefore use mission planning in a simulation when something happened, for example. Also, to get a little bit, we have it also later, the topic of artificial intelligence within a mission planning. So which things can occur, really see within the virtual reality what they are, the different possibilities. And so I think we see it a little bit, and you have to all of these topics links also if you are more interested. And within the links, we really see, for example, at the moment, there's a lot of trends of VR and mission planning in the military sector, and not only virtual reality, also augmented reality. So, for example, you really get secondary information, needful information, for example, from satellite pictures, from when you have in a city and really large catastrophe and have to manage there or something. This thing, and I'm looking forward what you have to tell to us to the crime scene investigation and the usage of virtual reality.
Okay. I have to mention first so that there are some links already in the chat, so you can have a look for case 2 crime scene investigation, and then you can see the links for YouTube videos, so you can get a better impression about the things, how they are used now, because we are not streaming the videos live, so we have experienced that is not working quite well, but you can do it during I'm talking. And the thing like crime scene investigation, on the first part, that means you can revisit your crime scene. So that means you have a digital twin of your crime scene, and then you can walk through it. You can take each perspective you want, and afterwards it's like conservated for investigating with other experts in a collaborative way. You can talk to lawyers, and also you can integrate data from multiple sources, that it's not only the digital information had not only to be visual information, it can also be like a 3D scan. Then you can measure in the 3D model, you can annotate in the 3D model information you got in. Another expert maybe will find other hints and can annotate them also, and that can also be done co-located, but one expert can sit in another city, in another country, and you can share your knowledge, share your experience, and provide your experience to solve the puzzle. And what's also quite interesting is that CSI, crime scene investigation for the digital twin, is the multiple data sources. So when you have like ultraviolet light source, or you want to annotate fingerprints, you can mark each thing where fingerprints were found. You can integrate that data in there. You can have when spots of blood on the wall, you can assign them out of the data that are analyzed to whom this blood concerns in the scene, if there are more victims. And another thing is, as seen here on the right bottom picture, is they are using a Microsoft HoloLens. So they're using the visual information to create a 3D model out of the where during the observation, and feedback the information in the system, then can annotate it in real time. So they get a one-to-one scale model out of them. They have where the victim is laying on the floor, and which objects were found, and you can annotate that virtually and bring that model back in a virtual realities environment, and then can investigate further with that. So, and you can also like use artificial intelligence to compare with other or already expert knowledge. So that means analyzing data with expert knowledge already done or existing can be, it's like in the medicine, so you have deep learning, like to detect diseases normal people won't do, or have not, each people have not the whole experience. So you can use make use of artificial intelligence and make exploration and explanations of different situations. So that means it's like a expert system that gives you additional advice what could happen, or what other hints can be given in a scene. So
thank you very much, Herbert. No, I think it's really quite interesting topic. What I really loved is the topic of collaboration. I think especially when you have a crime scene and you would like to talk about this with colleagues. So for example, I see today also as one of our attendees is Tzvini Sin from the Israel police. So hi Tzvi. I think we also discussed this for some months. I think this is quite interesting because you can have the joint investigation, you can share it worldwide and can discuss the crime scene. And I think it's quite interesting because you have this 360-degree viewpoint. You also, and this is something I talked a lot with Helmut. Maybe you can also try out things in the crime scene modeling in the meaning of time. So, for example, what could happen 5 minutes before? You can make a little bit like a virtual reality movie from the information you have of the crime scene. So really, what was the first steps on the crime scene? What changed maybe? And I think this is really a very interesting topic of the future, especially when the 3D scanning is getting much better, because then you really have maybe 2 or 3 hours and you can really freeze this one room. So for example, the crime scene was in a hotel, and you have there the one hotel room, and you can really save on the one hand the evidences, you can discuss it with colleagues. You also, and we know this from the topic of immersion and presence in the virtual reality, because you can really always, if you're working on this case, jump into the case. and really get a much better feeling. And what we found also from the research topic, it's one of the most interesting virtual reality topic in the law enforcement agency. There's really happening a lot. For example, better 3D scanners, improving their realistic scenario. Like you mentioned, the artificial intelligence, that, for example, you can also compare different cases. So if you have really this database of, for example, thousands of different virtual reality cases in the history, then you compare it together. Are there similar findings? Are there interesting findings? Is there maybe a model behind different cases? And so I think we will also work on this topic in the future, but I think you have some more interesting views in the topic of crime scene, Helmut.
Yeah, in the first part, it was crime scene as applied, virtual reality applied in the identification and in the investigation. And the other case could also be like in the training, so using crime scenes to train people. That means they can be done manually, but you can also use an existing crime scene that it's already digitalized. And what is also like a good point is, so when you're doing a training, you have to bring on blood or what else, and then doing it again with another group, you have to clean up first and then prepare the situation again. And in virtual reality, that's the big advantage. You don't have to clean up the room, and at least it would be much easier. So, and then in that situation, you can practice the skills. That means you can see if the people are trained and doing the trained procedure, where they're looking for, what are they prepared for, and if they're aware of where not to step because of destroying some evidence. And in that sense, it could also be used like there is a solution out there. If not everybody is a crime scene investigator, but other peoples are the first one on the spot. That means medical first responder, other first responder. Maybe they're the first one, and you can use also like virtual reality to train them in a more easy way what they had to be beware of, not stepping around, and not what they not should do and not touch, so that the evidence is not destroyed for this investigation later on. So, and the training is here also can be supported with eye tracking. So when people are doing the training, and then the trainer can have a look which spot they've seen, which evidence they've not seen. So what have they missed in there? How long did they look at that? And then they can make a debriefing out of that, and there can be a good discussion and learning for the students, so to become a better CSI investigator.
Thank you very much, Helmut. Let's jump to our next topic, the virtual autopsy.
Yeah, that's similar to before. You have a digital twin, but here you have it from a body. That means you're using different technologies to scan the body, and computer tomography and something else. And you can also look into the body and create a digital crime investigation. For that means our examiner, a second one, can have a look at finding also, like as in the other one, in the normal virtual CSI thing, the other expert can have a look at. You don't have to move the body. He only has to use virtual reality and can have a look at it and can say what is his opinion about that. And that must not be only a forensic pathologist, but also can other medical people or another police officer having same things seen by other bodies, and that's a big advantage. So you have a digital thing you can slice without slicing a real body, and can see in the body, and you can also annotate things on the body. So that means you can make an annotation, a bone is broken here, or something else. What he means is noteworthy for that, and can there and annotate the whole scenario, so that it gets more information into the model that can then be used to solve the crime scene. or the crime.
Thank you very much. I also think, if one just correct me, there are also similar things like we had at the mission planning, which are quite interesting in the virtual autopsy, as in the meaning of co-creation and sharing the information. So I found some cases in the last time where the people and the experts, the examiners, for example, went together with the virtual reality in the body and discussed something like shooting wounds, or but also the possibility. This is also what I read, that there was the first trials, I think it was in Germany, that where they used the virtual autopsy in the VR also as an evidence for the court, and also, for example, for the lawyer, that she can really get a feeling of what happened, for example. And also, if during the court process are discussions, you have always the evidence there, and it's not classically 2D pictures, or maybe sometimes you would like to have information which is not on the pictures. This is for me one of the big advantages in the VR, because you have everything scanned, all the information there, and you can always use it, and you get much more this really feeling of what happened, and get much more information, like you also said, with the notices, with the sharing function, with the discussion function, with functionalities like zooming in or zooming out, to share with others if you have one special case. And so I also think, as we're always coming back to the same big advantages of virtual reality, but I think it's quite interesting to see these different cases where we can have applications in the virtual reality and in the law enforcement context. And let's jump to our fourth case. Thank you very much, Helmut.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, the next part is like for police training, to build empathy or self-reflection and resilience in different situations. So virtual reality is therefore used in psychology. So like for arachnophobia, so if you're afraid of spiders, so it's used already for that, to expose people to such situation, and then to learn how to cope with the situation and reduce the stress and the mental load in such a situation. And that can also be used for police training, and it is already used in the military sector. So they are using the exposure therapy, where people from military have experienced hard situations, real hard situations, losing colleagues and bomb blasts, and see the whole scenario, and experience such situation. And then you have it's like as mentioned here, is to extinguish the association, this bad association, and learn how to cope with the situation. It's not that dangerous, or not that fear you feel in the same situation when it experience again. And it's not only the pictures, only the noise, the sound, and everything again makes this whole thing what then can be used in exposure therapy. And another way is you always see it like a police officer, but you can, in virtual reality, you can change roles and perspective. That means how would you think would it be for the victim in a situation? Here's a video game for different diseases of people, so they don't react to when people are shut up or be silent, drop the weapons, why they don't do it. And that is like a simulation of autism or schizophrenia. So then the police officer can step into the situation. What the people with this disease hear, see, and what not, how they perceive it, and why they're acting so strange to them. And using that metaphor, using the perspective of the other one, the experience of the other one, that means that brings more empathy to people in such a situation. And that means also like better resilience to the police officers and better decisions, like if people behave like this. So that must not always be the danger thing, that could also be then people are not understanding because of some diseases.
So, thank you very much. If you talked about also this change of perspective, maybe just also a little example from your own project, Helmut. Also, we had, for example, I think it was for 2 years, the topic of city planning. And that was quite interesting. What we tried there was to view and to feel a city and traffic from a kid's view. And this was quite interesting in virtual reality because we can shrink you, and then you're maybe in the age of 5 or 6 years and only 1 meter 10. And then it was quite interesting what the people experienced. This was only one little issue. But if you have a complete different view on the street, on the behavior, for example, you are entering a park, have there the trees, you're trying to cross the street between 2 parking cars. And it was really interesting from an adult point of view, you never thought this danger. But if you are done in the VR only 1 meter 10, 1 meter 20, you really do not see anything. And I think this is also a quite interesting topic, and we have it at the moment in several projects, also under the topic of resilience, where they change perspective. And I think VR is getting more and more, also like you mentioned, that you have much more feeling of the person. How as, for example, we also had this one of the projects, see the world from a person with a wheelchair. Also then is completely everything different and getting more complex. Also from the height, from stairs, from traffic, from information, from science. And so I think this is, also, we also call this getting situational awareness. And I think this is also a quite interesting topic to change the perspective and to learn from the perspective. Also maybe this can also be a part of in law enforcement training. We now know it sometimes a little bit from the ambulance and from the medical topic, where it's quite interesting. For example, if you have a person with schizophrenia, and what does it change? Or I think I had for some years a project which was calling my old age, in the meaning of the virtual reality plus additional devices makes you from today from 40 to 85. So for example, there was a backpack which was really hard to wear. You had in the virtual reality things like your view is not so perfect like it is at the moment. So, and these small things are really completely changing sometimes the context. And I think if we know much more about the people and about their behavior and about their feelings, then we really learn a lot. And like we said, especially with this topic of situational awareness. And what I also think is quite interesting, and there we will also start a project in autumn in the topic of resilience training, is also to try to use virtual reality as a self-learning platform. So maybe you do not need a trainer or you do not need a second person, that you really have an adaptive content, an adaptive, I will call it resilience game, where really go through different steps. We will measure with biosensors, like for example, your heart rate, your eye tracking movement, a little bit your behavior, also your progress, for example, in this different program, and then create an adaptive intelligence content in the meaning of the content is really generated on your feedback, on your behavior. We really see a learned progress. As we call this resilience intelligence training. And I think this is also a little bit the future of VR, where we say we have these possibilities of measure things and then to create things really in a live view. And these are things which are maybe not possible in a real world. You cannot change a complete scenario. You cannot create a complete new different world. And you cannot measure how the people will behave. So for example, with the eye tracking. And these are things where we really see also the resilience training, a very strong need of research in VR and to try out things. Let's jump to our next case for completely different VR and drones.
Yeah, so drones is not that new one, and VR also not. There is also like head-mounted devices are used to steer and fly drones, to operate drones. So you see through head-mounted display what the camera is seeing at the drone, and then you can fly the drone out of flight, out of sight, and how more far away than you see it. But that is not meant in that sense for VR. VR here is meant you have a complete physical simulation of a drone, and you operate it maybe with the original remote control or a Xbox controller and learn how to fly a drone, because already big drones are quite expensive. So I mean, if you're using it at the police, they are not using the cheap ones, so they have heavy equipment on it, like a gimbal system, camera system, with tracking facilities of objects, and they are quite expensive. And that means that flying a drone has to be trained and must be done exactly. So you have a lot of obstacles in the urban environment. So where to have look at and how to operate it in a safe manner can be done in virtual reality. And that helps you then learning and operating the additional things, not only flying, you have to control then the cameras and other sensors. And as we have seen in the first case for the mission planning, there the drones could also be used in real case. So to build immediately in just in time a 3D model or a situation, a picture out of a situation, and that data are fed back then, and how to operate a drone to get reliable data from a 3D model from an environment can also be trained in a special use case and can be simulated for that. Another way is here also mentioned is the project, the autonomous drone racing flight. That means you are flying a real drone, but in an empty environment, and in virtual reality, you see the environment, but it does not exist. That means when you fly in a wall, there's nothing happens, but then you can train how to steer exactly your drone under hard conditions or at high speed. So it's quite funny to have a look at that video and what they are doing. So it seems that they have fast forward and forward 4 times speed, so fast they are flying through the environment. But yeah, I think that's also a good idea, so that augment the view with other things, and can also be used in real environment when you see windmills or else what are hard to fly through and how to behave on that things.
Thank you very much, Helmut. Then I think I will jump to 2 of our last cases. Something completely different, not drones, not mission planning, but there are also some reports and research at the moment to use virtual reality for interviewing, especially with special target groups. So for example, with kids, in the meaning of you build in the VR and safe environment. You build maybe in very personalized environment. So for example, this could also be in fantasy world, because there was some research papers and publications that kids sometimes feel very uncomfortable in interviewing situations. So for example, with sexual abuse, with domestic violence, and there we think, so this is really in the beginning of the research, if it makes sense to really create a safe environment, to create a personalized environment. And also I found there the first evidences, for example, that there was a study where kids like more to talk with a robot than with a human. And they really told completely more stories, was much opener in talking when it was not a real human, because the robot was very designed, very familiar, very friendly, you know, with these large eyes and something like this. And so I think there could be the possibility, if you create the environment, but also the interview partner, which could be a police officer and a psychologist, but maybe in a complete personalized lookalike. So I think in one of the papers, I found the topic of unicorn. So kids chose as an interview partner in unicorn, and then it was for them much easier to get in this situation. It was also a little bit gamified from the interview process. And so I think there's really a need for future research on the one hand, and also to try it out in several studies, because at the moment there's really, you also mentioned it with the resilience training. Here is also from the trauma topic, that also there the virtual reality can help, that people open, that people talk about their issues. So for example, when you also have witnesses, and I think there could be a nice, interesting research topic in the future, how we can use their VR to create this environment, to create the personalization, what means personalization in the context, and also to look at the results. Do we really get the results we want? Does it really support or not? You know, sometimes I think there were some cases which are much more to the practical at the moment, but there's also a strong need for conducting research, to think over about these things. And this is one of the cases I really like, because I think there are many possibilities. Maybe really, so just as a last case for today, also our topic was not to talk hours about the different cases, so this was 7 cases we took out from our last experience, from our discussions with our law enforcement agencies and partners. What I also think, and this is a little bit overwhelmed, but here as an example, is where we really see a big advantage from the virtual realities in the context of simulation for really complex situations, which are on the one hand very expensive to train, which are maybe sometimes impossible to train. So here is a simulation for base jumping. It's also a military simulation. And what I really like that you train there, or that you simulate there, really dangerous malfunctions. So for example, what happens when my equipment is not working? What happens, for example, when a storm is coming up, when the weather is changing or something like this? And they really have a complete virtual reality system, but also really a multisensory approach with a wind machine, for example, with a weather machine, that you really can train these situations, which you can never do in the reality. You can only talk about in theoretical way, but not really to feel it on your own when something happens. There was really nice studies, and I also put there a link, that you really see the behavior between the virtual reality and a real is very close. Also, you can really create, and this is also something we found out in ShotPros, really creating high stress in the virtual reality, so that people accept it. If the immersion is okay, if the presence is okay, presence is for me always the wording of I'm feeling I'm there. So I'm really in the virtual. So I'm not in the virtual reality. I'm in this world, and everything what I'm doing there, all my behavior, all my acting, is they are really, really very similar. And so I think these complex simulations can really be interesting for situations which we can never train, which we can never do in the reality. And also there will be a boost in the next 4 or 5 years, because we also had it in ShotPros. Equipment is getting cheaper, possibilities are getting more and more. I only think we have always to define, and you see it here on the different cases, what is really interesting, what is really important for the future. Do we have really the concrete requirements to create such scenarios, and always to think about of the end user feedback. And this leads us a little bit, and really just for the end, 3 research topics, which is also interesting for us both at the moment, and where also I think in the next 4 or 5 years will be a little bit the direction. And these are also learnings we had in ShotPros on the overall of the virtual reality topic. So for example, there's always the need for more realism, also in the meaning, and this is really just one example of how we can feel or have walls and barriers within the virtuality. We have this in our scenarios, for example, if you are in a domestic violence scenario or in a terror scenario and have there a wall, how do we show the people that they should stop, can stop? So for example, we are using haptic feedback. This is the vest the people have on, but this is really just from the research point of view. It's not at the moment on the market and not to try out, but I think it's really funny, and you can then click on the link. Here on the picture, one person and 3 moving elements around him. These are really automated robots which play the walls. And if you are in the different rooms, or if you're coming to the wall, the robots are standing in front of you. And this is now also trying out, for example, with furniture or something like this, that you have these really barriers, because, for example, you are in a case where you are in the hotel room, you have steady desk, steady bed. Of course, in virtual reality, you can jump over these things. But I think these are the first ways where the research is trying to find solutions. I think the haptic one, like our vests, is really one of the first approaches, but this could also be a quite interesting topic. And I also think we have it in the future, a little bit this topic of robots who support in the virtual reality, and the more realism theme, and it's really one of the most interesting from a research hub. A second topic we have here, which is also a topic of ShotPros, but we have it now in a lot of projects, is haptic devices in the virtual reality, haptic or tangible devices. In the meaning, you normally have just a controller in the hands, maybe only one controller. This is not the right tools. This is not the correct tools, especially if you think on training. So this example is from ShotPros, but we also have it now, Helmut, a project in the CBRNE sector, where people are trained to work, for example, with a Geiger counter. And this is quite interesting because then you need something real in the hand which is working, where maybe have the same functions like in the reality. And so I think this also raises very well the immersion and the presence for the virtual reality. In our project, and this was really for us quite interesting, we really rebuilt one-to-one the tactical belt from a police officer to use in the virtual reality. Everything is on the right position. So here you can see the pistol and the holster, the pepper spray. And it was really interesting to see in the studies that the people, after some minutes, have really the feeling because they are there and they use it like in the correct way. And on the other hand, and this is what I think from the research point of interesting is quite necessary for the future to observe if there are any constraints. So, for example, in one of our demonstrations, I saw that someone has something in the hand. So, for example, the baton, and then went to a table and put it there. And of course, there is no table in reality, and it fell down. But I think these are the issues, and of course, not everything is gold. There's sometimes things you have to improve. But how you can use these haptic devices, how you can really have an benefit of them. But on the other hand, if there are constraints, how you can work against these constraints. But I think this combination of haptic devices is really a strong power of the future of virtual reality, a very interesting field from the research topic. So I think, Helmut, also you at the AIT have their own topic of tangible devices in the VR. Also for how we can integrate robots, supporting systems, like I mentioned, the CBRNE field, the Geiger counter. Also, last time I see a study at the AIT, which was also quite interesting, that they used a real smartphone in the virtual reality. So you can take out your own smartphone, and the screen of the smartphone is captured and in real time within the VR. So you have your own screen, your used screen, all with your own settings. It's not an foreign device or something which is just a simulation. It really feels because it's your own device, and you can do something. And I think this mixture of reality in the VR really put it on the next level. And there we also see in the last years that this really helped for the success and for the usage of virtual reality. And maybe as a last point, a little bit from the research trends, which is also for us quite interesting in short prose, where we're thinking bit is the topic of multisensory experience. In the meaning, how can we still raise the realism, still raise the presence, still raise the immersion of the people, in the meaning of when you're walking through a rain, could there be something that feels like a little bit of rain? Are there heat differences, for example? Also vibration, so we are using our vest, where we have the possibility of vibration. We also conducted last year a study next to ShotPros in the possibility of pain in the VR. Also, like you know it from the 3D shooting cinemas in the law enforcement context, where sometimes is used pain stimuli if you are hurt or a bullet is coming to you. And so I think it's quite interesting to have this multisensory topic of haptically, tactically on your own body, of, for example, is wind changing anything? And for example, there's an own research topic in the last month or years also for capturing smell in the VR, because smell is a really strong indicator for people that they feel they are at this situation. And if you have a scenario in a wood against in an urban city place, then of course it's completely different from the feeling. And for us, it's quite interesting. Is this necessary? Also, this is also, I think, always a topic we have to discuss and observe. Is it possible from the technology point of view, but also is it necessary for the end users? And is it really important for the success, or is it just a nice to have? And I think this direction is especially for the future, and also in some studies we are planning at the moment in our so-called human factor studies in our project, to try such things out, and then really to find out what is a must-have, what really support the tasks, the efficiency, the goals of the training, and what is on the other hand maybe a nice to have, and you can really say, let's keep this. Would you add something, Helmut?
You said a lot, and I think I've not many things to add here. I think also like these haptic devices and tangible interfaces quite the next pathway in virtual reality to make it more realistic. So as you mentioned already, we are using a real smartphone. So in that sense, we are using it for context, using virtual reality for context simulation, and see how people behave in using their smartphone in different situations. You can test different applications. You can use it in stressful situations similar to shot pros, or you only can use it like you make an impression of the future, like the mobility in future, how it would look like, and the mobility guide will pass or route you through this environment and how you perceive the environment and how you will use this smartphone as device. Or maybe in future, maybe we are not anymore using smartphones or other devices integrated in our clothes, and virtual reality is the lens that gives you the view in the future where you can try out a lot of things, and these are add-ons, I would say, to augmented virtual reality to make it more realistic.
Thank you very much for these add-ons. Maybe we're really coming to the end of 2 more slides, so I'm perfect in my time. 5 takeaways, so a little bit as a summary also for today. But our goal was just to give you an idea. It was really not the goal of diving deep into the different topics, but to guide you a little bit through of projects where we are on our own working, but also where we see the strong needs, the interesting for virtual reality in the context of police. I think it's also an exciting time of discovery. So nowadays, it's really, you cannot say this is the one system, this is really the direction where virtual reality is going. It's time of discovery, it's time of to try out things. It's really also the time to bring things to the market. This is what we try with the shot process. We really know at the end what makes the first virtual reality simulation for the topic of decision making on acting. I also think, and this we learned from a lot of VR projects, especially in the training sector, it's always enhancing the training. It's supporting the training. So for example, this could also be in case, I didn't have it in the slides, is I discussed this with some European law enforcement agencies in the last month, is this topic of train with virtual reality at home. Also, especially now during the COVID situation, you maybe have not the possibility of large classes. I think there was also one study in the Netherlands in the last year where we had the first time of really well-fitted applications and training simulations for at home, especially for the law and regulation topic, because this is something you can do with e-learning simulations, and it's much, and this we know from all of the studies, you have much more immersion, you have much more learning process and task fulfillment in a virtual reality than against the classical 2D simulation e-learning thing. So I think it's always an enhancing. It's also thinking of the future, how we can create trainings curricula where the virtual reality support the actual training. Maybe there are some cases the virtual reality can really have a 100% impact and not only enhance it, but also make it much better at the moment. And on the other hand, I think you need the trainings curricula, you need really the knowledge of how we will set it up, how we will use it in every of these cases, because we have completely new ways to experience with virtual reality. So like you think of multisensory, what is really changing in the next 3 to 4 years, which technology can really get then more immersion and more presence of the people. But and I think this is always in my talks, 2 things which are always important, because technology can only support us and can only support the users. So the most important things is really define the requirements, really know the context, and have the right content, because I think it's like everything in the digital world. Content is the king, content is on the first position. If you do not have the scenarios, if you do not have the trainings material, if you do not have the information. So for example, we are now working on the whole content of how can we make that the after review after virtual reality topics and trainings, how can we create dashboards, information, automation, also really use the technology we have and they really generate and benefit. Also in the meaning of saving time, saving money, have more training in a short time with more users, because this is one of the highest requirements we have in all of our projects. And really at the end, never forget the end users, because I think you always have to try out things with end users. So for example, with the forensic topic. So I think there are so many possibilities. And this is maybe, also if you're interested, this is one of my goals for Autumn. We would like to make an forensic virtual reality workshop just to discuss things, because I think there's a lot on the market. You have the possibilities of the CT scans, but I think especially with experts and with all around the world, it's quite interesting to see where the direction is going, what could be the next interesting parts. Is it the collaboration? Is it more the saving the evidence for later things? Is it this open the crime scene for other people, like for the court, for example, that they have the same feelings? So I think these things we should discuss, or if you're interested, I'm always happy if you contact me. And what we are also doing, I think it was also mentioned in the previous webinars, but now it's coming more and more closer from the date. In the beginning of May, June, we will start with our VR police technology network, in the meaning of, also we have at the moment the slogan, drive the police to the future of virtual reality. What we are doing now at the moment, like today, is collecting cases, collecting experiences, also establishing the connection between external experts at the different law enforcement agencies, but also manufacturers, just to, because I think there's a strong need to focus on the exchange about these virtual reality topics, like we had it today, from the drones to the forensic to the autopsy. Also sharing of best practices, because we really find millions of information, but not on one place, not in the meaning of easy to read. Also, this is also one of our learnings we had in our project, that we really try from every scientific document really to generate knowledge for the practitioners, and really there to share the best practices from the practitioner side. We also plan at the end of our short course, our final conference, where we'll also have the slot of virtual reality and the future, and also collect their information, also like today, but a little bit more in the deeper new cases in 1 year, and also the identification of people who are interested in the virtual reality topic within the law enforcement agencies, and also who would like to share maybe their knowledge or get also feedback on some things. Also if you are doing studies, so at the moment we are talking, I think, with approximately 10 to 12 organizations in Europe about their own experience, for example, with different systems. Also, I think, and this should be a long-term goal of the network, because this, I think, is at the moment one of the largest barriers, is sharing also of content. Also, a lot of organizations, countries are creating their own scenarios, their own content for training, their own trainings curriculum. As I had the same discussions in Germany, in Austria, in England. I think this is also a next step for this whole topic. Also, Helmut and me discussed this together, completely not in the police area, much more in the military sector, together with the NATO. They have the same problem. They have now a lot of virtual reality training cases, simulators, but not one platform and not one regulation for the content. And this is really sometimes a problem, especially in the meaning of money. You're rebuilding the 10th time the same scenario, like a domestic violence, and it would be much more better if you have there in common platform and in common knowledge. And this is so one of our biggest goals of the VR and police network. And you can go to our website. You have there the register possibility. I think most of you in our newsletter, and most of you, I think, know Valerie. And Valerie will then send out the community of our network. There's the possibility to join, to discuss it. And what we will also try then, I mentioned it before a little bit, is to have small workshops, not like today where we are just talking, much more workshops together with the different law enforcement agencies about these topics, and really to have this exchange, sharing, and identification of topics. And thank you very much for your time. And this really brings me to the end from our part, and we'll ask you if there are any questions where we can support. Thank you very much. So I think now it's my turn to open. No questions mean everyone felt in slept, or we were so good that we really explained everything
overwhelming
in detail.
Yeah.
So if there are really any questions, maybe not now, maybe later, most of you know me, just send us an email, just get in contact with Valerie, and we would really happy to answer something and really to work on this, I think also strategically topic in the meaning of what is virtual reality and what is the future, also the context of police. If there are no questions, I would say thank you very much, have a nice afternoon, and see you the next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.